it has happened to you. You think of someone you haven't spoken to in years, and minutes later they call. A word you just learned turns up 3 times in a day. You're wrestling with a problem, and a stranger says the exact sentence you needed. A coincidence so precise, so perfectly timed, that coincidence feels like the wrong word entirely. And when it happens, you're handed 2 explanations, and both feel wrong. The skeptic says, meaningless chance, your brain finding patterns in noise. The mystic says, the universe is sending you a sign, it's fate, it's a message meant for you. One feels too cold, the other feels too much. Carl Jung spent decades on exactly this, and he arrived at a third answer, stranger than the skeptics, and far more careful than the mystics. He called it synchronicity. By the end of this, you'll understand what synchronicity actually is, why Jung, a rigorous man, no lover of superstition, took it so seriously, and how to hold these moments wisely without fooling yourself in either direction. Stay with me. Let's start with the experience itself, because nearly everyone has had it, and almost no one talks about it honestly. A meaningful coincidence, 2 events with no possible causal link between them, that nonetheless line up so precisely and so meaningfully that they seem connected. Not connected by cause, nothing made the other happen, but connected by meaning. Think of Anna, who on the morning of her father's funeral found the kitchen clock had stopped at the exact hour he had died days before. There was no mechanism for it. A stopped clock is nothing. And yet, standing there, she felt the unmistakable sense that something had been marked. That meaning had, for a moment, bled through the surface of ordinary events. This is the experience Jung refused to throw away. Most of us do throw it away because we've been given only 2 boxes to put it in: dumb luck or destiny. And since destiny sounds superstitious, we file it under luck and quietly ignore the fact that it didn't feel like luck at all. Jung's genius was to take the experience seriously without leaping to the supernatural. Why this matters? The fact that you have no good word for these moments doesn't mean they aren't real. It may mean your culture handed you the wrong 2 words. Notice how quickly we apologize for these moments. We tell the story and immediately add, I know it's silly, but defending ourselves against a ridicule we've swallowed. Something in us knows the experience was real. Something we were taught insists it was nothing. Jung simply declined to perform that second step. So what did Jung actually propose? He gave the experience a name and, carefully, a definition. Synchronicity, he wrote, is a causal connecting principle. Sit with that phrase, because it's doing something radical. We assume everything that's connected must be connected by cause. One thing makes another happen. Jung proposed that there might be a second way things connect, not by cause but by meaning. 2 events, causally unrelated, bound together because they share a meaning that a mind can recognize. The most famous example came from his own consulting room. A patient, brilliant and rigidly rational, was stuck. Her intellect a fortress no insight could enter. One day she was describing a dream of a golden scarab, an Egyptian symbol of rebirth. As she spoke, Jung heard a tapping at the window. He opened it, and a scarab-like beetle, a rose chafer, gold green, the closest thing to a scarab that region had, flew in. He caught it and handed it to her. Here is your scarab. The rational fortress broke. The impossible timing of it, the dream symbol arriving, alive in the room at that precise instant, undid her defenses in a way years of argument could not. That, Jung said, is synchronicity, not magic, not cause, but a meaningful coincidence powerful enough to change a life. Why this matters now. Jung wasn't asking you to believe in signs. He was pointing at something that actually happens and refusing to pretend it doesn't. Here's what makes this credible rather than flaky. Jung was not a mystic reaching for magic. He was a physician and an empiricist, deeply wary of superstition, who spent his life observing the mind with a naturalist's patience. And precisely because he was rigorous, he could not dismiss what he kept observing, that these meaningful coincidences clustered reliably around certain conditions, and that waving them away as just chance was itself a kind of superstition, a refusal to look. He was careful to say what synchronicity is not. It is not causality. The beetle didn't hear her dream. It is not you controlling reality with your mind. Nothing here says the universe rearranges itself to flatter your wishes. It's subtler and stranger. The observation that meaning sometimes seems to bridge the inner world and the outer one in ways our neat models don't predict. Jung took it seriously enough to explore it with one of the greatest physicists of the century, Wolfgang Pauli, both of them circling the same uncomfortable question of how mind and matter, meaning and world, might be related at some deep level. This was not a seance. It was two serious minds refusing to look away from something inconvenient. If this is the kind of thinking you want more of, careful, deep, unafraid of mystery but never sloppy, take a second to subscribe. There's a new piece of the inner life here each week. Now, let's go further. If synchronicity is real, a fair question follows. When does it happen? And Jung's observation here is one of the most useful parts of the whole idea. These meaningful coincidences don't scatter randomly across a life. They cluster around emotional intensity, around thresholds, around the great transitions, birth, death, falling in love, breakdown, breakthrough. They appear most when something deep in the psyche is activated, stirred, coming to the surface. Think of Peter, who in the weeks around leaving a life that was slowly killing him, a decision he'd delayed for years, was suddenly met by uncanny confirmations everywhere. The overheard conversation, the book left on a train, the stranger's offhand remark, each one landing like an answer to a question he hadn't said aloud. Jung's explanation was characteristically careful. At such moments, the unconscious is intensely charged, and it's as if that inner intensity and the outer world briefly fall into a kind of resonance. He didn't claim to know the mechanism. He simply noted the pattern, that synchronicity rises where the soul is most alive, most in motion, most at a turning point. Why this matters? If these moments crowd into the turning points of your life, they may be less a message from outside than a sign that something inside you is moving. This reframes the whole phenomenon in a far healthier direction. If synchronicities cluster around your turning points, their real value isn't as predictions or commands from outside. It's as markers, lit at the exact moments your inner life is most in motion. They say, in effect, pay attention here. Something in you is trying to change. A synchronicity, seen this way, is less a message about the future and more a spotlight on the present, a signal that you've reached one of the thresholds where who you are is genuinely at stake, which is also why they feel so charged. You're never calm when they arrive. You're at an edge. Peter never decided the coincidences were telling him to leave. He was too honest for that. What they did was subtler and harder to dismiss. They made him feel accompanied in a decision he'd been making alone and afraid, as if his own depths in the world had briefly agreed it was time. He still had to choose, but he chose awake. So what does synchronicity actually mean about the world? Here we have to be careful, because this is exactly where people go wrong in both directions. On one side, Jung's idea gently humbles pure materialism, the belief that reality is nothing but dead matter and blind chance, with meaning existing only inside our skulls. Synchronicity suggests quietly that meaning might be woven a little more deeply into the fabric of things than that the hard line between in here and out there may be softer than we assumed. That is a genuine and beautiful mystery, and Jung thought it deserved our wonder. But, and this is everything, that is not permission to abandon your judgment. Synchronicity does not mean every coincidence is a cosmic message. It does not mean the universe is arranging your parking spaces or endorsing your decisions. Read that way, it becomes a trap. You start seeing signs everywhere, bending reality to confirm whatever you already want, mistaking your own projections for destiny. That's not depth. That's self-deception wearing depth's clothing. Jung's stance was the hard, mature middle, open enough to take the genuine experience seriously, disciplined enough not to inflate every coincidence into fate. Wonder and skepticism held at the same time. Why this matters now? The goal is not to believe everything or to believe nothing. It's to stay awake to meaning without surrendering your judgment to it. It helps to see the two failure modes plainly, because almost everyone leans toward one. The reductionist can't afford for any of this to be real and explains away even a staggering coincidence to protect a worldview at the cost of honesty. The believer needs it all to be real and drowns in signs, handing decisions to omens and calling it faith. Both are ways of not staying present with the actual experience, one by shrinking it, the other by inflating it. Jung's path runs between them, and it is narrower than either, to feel the full weight of a genuine synchronicity and still keep your feet on the ground. There's a real humility in that middle way. You don't get to be the skeptic who has it all solved, nor the mystic for whom everything's a sign. You get to live in a world stranger than the first and more sober than the second, and to hold that strangeness with careful hands. So how do you actually live with this, without tipping into either the cold dismissal or the credulous drift? Jung's approach suggests a few honest practices. When a genuine synchronicity happens, one of the rare ones that lands with real weight, don't rush to explain it away and don't rush to worship it. Just notice it. Let it get your attention. Ask gently what it might be pointing to in your own inner life. Not, what is the universe commanding? But what in me is this moment illuminating? Treat a meaningful coincidence as an invitation to pay attention, never as an order to obey. The healthiest response is not, the sign told me to do it, but this striking moment made me look more honestly at something I was already facing. The synchronicity points inward to your own process, far more reliably than it points outward to some fixed fate. And keep the skeptic in the room. If you find yourself seeing meaning in absolutely everything, that's not heightened awareness. It's a loss of discernment, and Jung would be the first to say so. The meaningful ones are rare, and part of what makes them meaningful is that you didn't force them. Hold it all lightly. Stay curious, stay grounded, and let the genuine mysteries be genuinely mysterious. One simple practice keeps the balance. When something genuinely uncanny happens, note it. Write it down honestly, without decoration, and then return to your life. Don't build a theory on it. Don't wait anxiously for the next one. Let it be a data point of meaning, held loosely. Over time, the real ones stay with you and the forced ones fade, and you develop something better than belief or disbelief: discernment. The ability to tell the moment that truly landed from the one you merely wanted to. That discernment, not certainty, is the mature fruit of taking synchronicity seriously. Live this way, synchronicity stops being either a superstition or a party trick and becomes something quieter and more durable, a standing invitation to pay closer attention to your own life. You stop needing the coincidences to be messages. You simply become someone who notices when meaning surfaces and who has the discernment to bow to the real ones and smile at the rest. That attentiveness may be the truest thing synchronicity has to offer. Not a hotline to fate, but a deeper intimacy with the mystery you are already living inside. Here is the question to sit with tonight. Think of the coincidence in your life that felt too meaningful to be mere chance. The one you filed under luck because you had nowhere else to put it. What was happening inside you at that moment? What was it perhaps illuminating? Tell me in the comments. I read everyone, and I'd genuinely love to hear yours. Keep both your wonder and your skeptics switched on as you tell it. And if you want more of this, depth without superstition, mystery without nonsense, subscribe and stay close. We're learning to read the inner life together, one careful piece at a time, because the world may be a little more meaningful than we were taught. The trick is to notice that without ever losing your head.